I come in my freshman year, we're running one offense, and I'm a very different type of quarterback from a duality standpoint, but he basically uproots the entire offense in the offseason, goes to study Marcus Mariota with the Oregon Ducks, and completely flips our offense.
Our guest today is one of the most decorated quarterbacks in the history of Division III football, and now one of the rising offensive minds in the coaching profession. A former Mount Union quarterback who led the Purple Raiders to a 43-2 record as a starter, 3 consecutive national championship appearances, and the 2012 NCAA Division III National Championship. He made history by becoming the first junior to win the Gagliardi Trophy back in 2013, and then is the first player ever to win 2 Gagliardi Trophies, that other one coming in 2014. Finished his career with over 14,500 total offensive yards, which sounds absolutely crazy. He transitioned into the coaching world with stops at Mount Union, Case Western Reserve, most recently UC Davis, where he coached a Walter Payton Award finalist at the FCS level. And now he returns to the place where it all started as the offensive coordinator at Mount Union, Kevin Burke. How you doing today, man?
I mean, that is as elite as an introduction as you can get, man. You fire me up right now. You're on the Pat McAfee level of introductions. That was awesome.
Well, that means the world. I appreciate that more than you could ever know. But man, I'm so grateful for you coming on, knowing your story for a long time. And I also just a big fan as well of you, Mount Union, and everything that you're about. And but what's life look like for you lately? Obviously coming in, as the offensive coordinator, I'm sure there's been some transition. Obviously you were all the way in California, now coming back to Alliance, Ohio. But what's kind of the last couple months been like for you?
Yeah. There's quite a bit of transition, and both from a physical, you got to move the entire family out to Ohio from California across the country, but then to be a first time offensive coordinator and implement things you want, and just that there's a lot that I didn't necessarily realize, which I'm glad I didn't, because it's a lot. It's overwhelming at points, but it's everything that you want, especially if you love the sport and you have a desire to continue growing and learning. It's been great. It's been great, honestly. I've really been happy with every single day being here in Alliance and being back in Ohio. It's been amazing.
Yeah, you played for the legendary Division III. There's only one Larry Karras, right? And
yeah,
when you're thinking about implementing a system that you want to run, obviously Coach Dart brought you in for a reason, because there was a standard of excellence then, and obviously Mount Union wants to get back to a place of excellence that it knows and loves. But when it comes to developing a scheme, implementing a philosophy, an offensive philosophy that you want to do, what's kind of that first, those first couple steps in getting to that point that you want to get this offense to?
Yeah, I'll always go back to this for the rest of my coaching career, and just like all the Mount Union coaching tree guys will say too, is players, formations, plays. And the biggest part of that is the first thing, which is the players, and they determine really everything we do. So there was a lot of film study and watching, Mount Union in years past, and especially last season, just trying to make sure, hey, the starting point of what we do has to be what those guys can do and what they do well. So you start with that, and then you can kind of go from there, and that's the foundation, though. That's the basement before you build the house, and you got to make sure that is solid. So just seeing what we do well, what we're not that great at, and where we can be better. And so that's the starting point, is the players. And then you can kind of get into some more creativity as you go along. And that's changed. It's been, since 1985 when Coach Karras took over, there's that's 40 some odd years. It's almost 40 years to the day. And it's football has changed, but it hasn't and so there's different creative wrinkles you can do and emphasis, and there's, it's cyclical and all sorts of good stuff, but the starting point will always be the players, and that's, from when I was a player to, the 80s to now. It's just you're not going to get anything done the way you want to get it done unless you start with those guys. So, got to check your ego at the door and, make sure that you're doing, but you're doing right by the players, and, all the schemes and all the creativity that comes secondary. And, like I said, you got to check your ego at the door as a coach and just say, hey man, I gotta do what's best for these guys and what they're best at. So
When you talk about players, there's a guy in that building right now who I'm a huge fan of. I was a huge fan of him last year, and that's Mikey Maloney. I was a huge, when his first start, I was like, man, this dude really has a chance to do something special. When you look at his game, when you look at what he's all about, what excites you about him being able to do the things that you want to do?
yeah, I mean, what's not to like? He's everything you want in a quarterback, both on and off the field. I mean, I could legitimately go for hours talking about his abilities, but I think one of the best things about him right now is his hunger and his passion. And, he's talented, no doubt, but, he just texted me 10 minutes ago, what time you got available to come watch some film. So he's been that way from day one, and he's a guy that I talk to, as I'm trying to figure out, hey, is this the right place I want to be? Is this the right job for me? And we had a great conversation, and he put me at ease a little bit of, driving across country and moving across country of, this is the right type of person we want leading our program, leading the offense. But he can do it all. He can do it with his legs and his arm, and, he's smart. He's very aware of what he needs to get better at, but what he is strong at right now. And I think that awareness is pretty elite. Not a lot of guys have that. Everybody thinks that they're the best thing since sliced bread sometimes, but he's got some humility to him, probably too much. And those typically tend to be the better quarterbacks that always are striving to get better. But we look at 5 critical skills of the quarterback, and whether it's recruiting or current players, and he hits all 5, being accuracy, decision making, your agility, so your footwork in and out of the pocket, your toughness and leadership, and then 5th being arm strength. And so there's a list of things that we skill wise need to see out of guys. He knocks it out of the park with each of those. But I'm still learning and getting to know him, and as close as I think we are right now, there's definitely room to get even closer and get even better together. So I'm really excited about that in the future.
I said right following the loss to John Carroll this season. Obviously, you weren't a part of that, but I said on our show the following Monday, I said this is going to be the worst thing that happened to everybody else other than Mikey Maloney, because I said this is going to be the best thing that happened to him, because he's going to be even more fired up. Obviously, already seems to have that inner mentality and that inner desire to want to get better. But I said right after that, I said this is going to be a scary sight for the next 3 years at Mount Union. But from watching what he did this past season, obviously he covers a lot of ground as far as what he does well. But what do you think of the things that he needs to continue to get better, to continue to grow and continue to take that next step as a leader and as a quarterback?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, he's definitely taken that game specifically to heart, and you can kind of see it in the way he carries himself. And I mean, one of the first things we did together, him and I, and was watch that game, and I got to give credit to him a little bit because he wanted to, but I lost. You mentioned some of the stuff about me there, and playing 3 Stag Bowls in a row and winning the first one and then losing the next 2 is really hard. And the last one I lost in 2014, my senior year. I mean, I still haven't watched the tape. So it's just the wound is too deep. So it's one of those things that I really got to commend him for wanting to rip the Band-Aid off right away and Um, you know, he's so mature about that stuff, and that's why I think he's kind of the sky's the limit for the kid, and his ability to recognize that stuff and say, "Hey, no, look, I know it might be painful, but it's what I need, and it's what I need to get better." I mean, he's just come right out and told me, like, "Man, you got to hold me to the highest possible standard you can, and push me, and so on and so forth." Like he's been great about that stuff. So, I gotta stop talking about him sooner or later. Otherwise, he might get a big head here. So.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, we'll do that right now. But talking about you and your journey, I want to go back to, as I'm doing some research about you, and obviously you knew what you did as a Purple Raider at Mount Union, but I'm going back to St. Edward High School, one of the premier programs in the state at the time, and it seems that you just win everywhere that you go. 2010 state championship. Growing up in Ohio. I'm curious from a recruiting perspective, was Mount Union always the place that you knew you wanted to go? Because obviously Mount Union's always been kind of that place that people want to go in the state of Ohio, especially at the Division III level nonetheless. But in the recruiting process, was Mount Union always like at the top of your list, or what was kind of your process like back then?
No, it was not, and I didn't really think I was going to play football in college. I struggled a little bit my junior season in high school, and I played football and baseball, and so I was planning on playing baseball. And then my senior year comes around, and we kind of had a resurgence, so to speak, under Coach Finati in his second season, and that just kickstarted everything. I mean, it helps when you win; it's a little more fun. So we went 4-6 my junior year, and then we went 15-0 my senior year, and so that clearly that changed my mentality of, and I've grown and learned since then. It's not always about winning, but that certainly helped a young kid, see the joy that football can bring you. And so I started late in the recruiting process a little bit with football. I wasn't active at all my junior year, and really throughout my senior season. And so afterwards, I talked to schools, and Mount Union came into the fold and came up on campus, and then, did some different visits at the Division I level. Really not many, honestly, but I visited Mount Union, and it was a no-brainer. I mean, I saw the guys work out. I talked to Coach Larry Karras, and he sat me down, and it was like, all right. And this is back when we had DVDs, right? It's just, kind of dating myself a little bit, but I had a case full of DVDs from my senior year, because he told me to bring them, and he was like, "Hey, how about you throw in the worst game that you had?" I was like, "What?" I thought you were like wanting me, you know what I mean? Like, all right, I could do that. And I'm not happy about it, but put on the tape. And he's just asking me questions, and he's not necessarily like grilling me, but he's just asking me questions and learning about kind of how I operated and what I was thinking, and what led to certain decisions. And yeah, it was really unique. And since that visit, it was, I mean, not a doubt in my mind. I knew where I was going, and I just visited the other schools just to make sure I was making the right decision. But Mount Union came in late, and once I got here, I saw how special it was, and it's changed my life clearly for a lot of reasons. But yeah, it's just been a really unbelievable place to, if you love football. I don't know what a better situation can look like other than Mount Union, and I'm obviously biased, but this place is just so different and so special for football players specifically. But that's just me.
Certainly, I've never been to Alliance. We certainly want to get out there for a show this fall, hopefully, eventually. But I've heard some stories about Coach Karras, and one of those stories being that he was talking about throwing a post, essentially, and he's like, the posts are thrown like, and he apparently
38 yards on the hash.
There you go. Like, I feel like he's one of those guys that understood football maybe better than anybody in the history of time. What was it about you as a guy that played for him and had success for him that made him such a good coach, versus maybe aside from like the scheme specifically, but just how he was as a leader of all these men and all these championship caliber players?
Yeah, I think he is so unique because you talk about a story like that, right? And he had this combination of clear smarts and I everybody uses the word genius a lot, but he worked really hard to be as smart as he was. And I don't know if I think it's sometimes a cop out where people just call someone a genius and you don't really recognize how hard they work. Um, he would go above and beyond. I mean, just from my experience alone, and this happened so many other times throughout his career, but I come in my freshman year, we're running one offense, and I'm a very different type of quarterback from a duality standpoint. But he basically uproots the entire offense in the offseason, goes to study Marcus Mariota with the Oregon Ducks, and um, completely flips our offense, and in the matter of one offseason. And so that I'm thinking about that now, and I'm like, gee, how do you do something like that? Where do you begin? And the amount of work that it takes to do something like that is very daunting. Not a lot of people will do that for a variety of reasons. Ego is a big one, but work, seeing the work that is involved with that sometimes is a big part of it too. So he never had that play a part of the equation and just did what was always best for his team and the players on the team. So that to me was a huge part of what made him him. And he's still around and he's helping me. I mean, the other day he was kind of grilling me via text because I gave a response that he didn't necessarily love, and he's still coaching me. So it's good to have him be a part of this, and um, he's just different, but he's worked so hard to become that way, and then he's got that ability and the smartness and the work ethic, but he's convicted in what he believes, and I think that. Just like you want your players to be confident as all heck going out there on Saturday, whether you tell them the sky is pink or not, it's, hey, do you have conviction in that? Are you going to play, hair on fire, 100 miles an hour, believing that you're the better player because you have the better technique, the better knowledge, the better whatever it is? He had that conviction to go along with it. And that's a deadly combination. And that's why that's not the only reason, but that's to me what I saw as a player and now as a coach, why he was so just impactful and so damn good at what he did, from coaching coaches to obviously coaching players and being successful. It didn't just happen by accident. He worked really hard.
Yeah, and at the start of the show, I said that we're trying to get back to the success that Mount Union's had. And it's kind of funny because it's not like even lost like more than 2 or 3 games, but that's just the excellence that all of us have come to know Mount Union as. And when you were the starting quarterback there, like you said, you led the team to a national championship in your sophomore season. I'm curious, like for you, the expectation that Mount Union had always had leading your team to a national championship in that first year, was that what do you even remember about that season specifically? Was that kind of a whirlwind? I'm sure it was wild to even imagine that would be a possibility in only your second season in college. But what do you remember about that season and how that thing all kind of came together?
Yeah, that was really talk about pressure of just obviously the pressure of winning and the expectation of winning at Mount Union, just in general. But then you talk about being quarterback here, which that then ramps it up a little bit. And then you add on top of it, that year was one of the seasons that, was potentially a year that you'd have a class that left Mount Union without winning a ring. So since 1989, every class that went through their entire career playing at Mount Union, they won a national championship ring. And 2012, that senior class was in jeopardy of not winning. And so there was, a trifecta, so to speak,
Ooh.
of some pressure. But I just go back to the coaches and some of the players on that team, the senior leaders, and Nick Driscoll and Charles Diesel and Junior Collins, Chris Denton. I mean, you could go on and on about these guys that just focused on the today, focused on this week. Let's just do what we got to do to win this game and practice as hard as we can this week. And so it was a whirlwind. I mean, you didn't have your easy, 15-0 season and everything's great and we just win and show up and it's all sunshine and rainbows. We had some unbelievable games, Mary Hardin Baylor being one of the bigger ones, the highlights of that year, and coming back from down 14 in the fourth quarter, and to win in the Stag Bowl against St. Thomas, and that was a special season. But I think about those guys and how they handled everything. There just was a sense of urgency that I hadn't really ever been around before, and maybe because of this, extenuating circumstances in the context of the season. Maybe that's why, but everyone just had a sense of urgency. And so that's kind of what I recognized going through the year of just like, okay, this is what it takes to succeed is we can't really be laissez-faire about things. We have to, like, even if it's, hey, who's cutting the grass today? Well, let's go get it done as soon as possible. Let's get it done. Right. And if we can approach everything with that sense of urgency, I think that creates just an overall consistent culture of execution, and everyone's kind of on the same page there. So yeah, that season was a whirlwind. It was a lot of fun. But I think looking back now, you're just so in the moment, you don't really think about all that pressure that kind of gets added to it, which is how it should be, right? That you should be so focused and dialed in with what I got to do on, March 11th, this Wednesday. Like, how do we get it done? Like, what do we got to do today? Right. So if you just do that, then you can look back and do what we're doing now. Right. And look back, hey, 14 years ago, that was a pretty fun year, wasn't it? Right. And then we can have those good old day kind of conversations. But in the moment, you got to have those blinders on and just roll.
I read somewhere that in 2013, you were the only returning offensive starter going into that next season. I can imagine being on the championship team, being the only one that started that season, coming back. I can imagine there was even more pressure it's like, hey man, like we better go do this 3 more times or 2 more times essentially. What did that season teach you about like leading a team? Because obviously a lot of guys are, you're looking up to a lot of guys in that 2012 season, but now it's like, man, I'm a junior and I'm the only one kind of coming back. Like now I really got to step into that leadership role and make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to get us in the right spot.
Yeah, that was it was unique. It was fun. But what you don't really see from the outside is how much that the guys that took over in 13, specifically we're talking offensively, the guys that, the Luke Meachams, the Jack Nichols, and our entire offensive line, those guys had been for years getting to the point of becoming a starter. And so whether it was in our JV program, getting reps, because I started, a JV quarterback here, and my freshman year, I thought I should have been starting, but who doesn't? And I love those JV experiences. And so you combine that with the work ethic those guys had in the offseason, and then in practice, like our practices were hard. They were very difficult. And so, every single week, every single day, you're going against some of the best players, and not just going against them. And there's obviously a lot of scout practices against scout team that you do, but we had good on good. We had these one-on-ones, ones-on-ones, not necessarily your routes one-on-ones, but we had these best on best type of periods almost every day. And so those younger guys got those opportunities in 2012, to get those reps. And so in 13, they're just ready to step in. And, our off seasons are very difficult. It's very grueling to be in the off season here with us because, like I said, everything has to be harder than the game. And so it's enjoyable. It's really, really fun to be here if you love football on a daily basis. But we work when it's time to work. And so that off season, it was a lot of work in spring and in summer to make sure that those guys were ready to go when it mattered most going into the season. And so, you look on paper like you're doing, which is like, hey, you're the only starter, but it never for one game felt like, man, I'm the only starter. Like, what can I get some help? It was never, ever that. And honestly, some of those guys pulled me along, even as good as I thought, I played the year before. Some of those guys pulled me along to make me even better. And I already mentioned some of them, but yeah, that was fun. It was challenging in its own right, but it was not by any means like, because the coaching staff is just, like I said, I talked about Larry Karras, but it's Jeff Dart, who's our head coach now, who was the OC then, and Steve McNeely, who was the quarterback. You just have all these guys that are constantly pushing a little bit further forward to make sure that each player at each position was ready to go. And it's hard to do that, and they don't get the recognition they deserve. It looks like on paper that it's me pulling guys along and making sure that, but it's not. It was almost the opposite. Those guys were doing everything really well. That it made my job easier, and it made just executing the offense really, really fun and easy. So yeah.
Well, when everybody's a starter for the first time wherever they are, right? In the moment that they step foot on that practice field as a starter the first time, that guess what? They're a starter now. And that season, was you won that first Gagliardi Trophy, and I'm just curious, like your relationship with that award. Like when you think about the Gagliardi Trophy, it's such a historic award. I got to know a lot more about it with Caleb this year, just with my connection to River Falls. But when you think about that award, what kind of comes to mind first with winning that not only once but like being the only person to win it twice?
Yeah, it's just not an individual award. I don't care. I don't care how many times people give recognition to me or Lenahan, who was from North Central, who was the other 2-time winner. And he's unbelievable player. I was so happy that, because it was I don't know, it's a weird thing to be the only one to do something. But
Yeah.
he was really, really successful, and it was really fun to watch him. But it just isn't an individual award. I just don't care how many times people say it. I'll die on this hill until I'm blue in the face. But it's just, I mean, you can't do that with you can't win that award without all the cogs in the machine working really well. Not just like working, but working really well. So whether it's, your running back or, your offensive line, tight ends, receivers, like everybody's got to be tip top shape. And if you look at that River Falls team, I mean, they didn't have a weak link. And so there's a reason that typically the guy that wins that award is playing a couple days later in the national championship. I
Yeah.
would be very curious to see how many times that award's been won by somebody not at least in the semifinal, right? So it's, and trust me, like it was amazing, and I look back at that as proud as I ever can be of personally accomplishing something, because I'm not trying to minimize that, but boy, the the guys like Pat Mahoney and Charlie Avila that blocked for me, or Luke Meacham and Therese Scott that were out on the perimeter, like laying their bodies out on the line just to catch an errant pass of mine, or Logan Nemeth, and giving up their body to protect me. Like that stuff is what sticks with me. And I, vividly remember winning and just like looking out into because at the time it was the same like champions dinner event down in Salem. And it was, both teams were there. And then you'd announce the winner at that dinner. And just remember winning the award, hearing my name called, and like looking out and seeing all of my teammates like lose it and, start hooting and hollering. Like, that's what that award's for. So it's really, really a special time in my life. And to be able to do that and share that with friends and family, it was really cool. But it's an awesome, like, and I love that it's called the Gagliardi because of what Coach John Gagliardi is. I think his impact is really, really strong and cannot be argued at the Division III level. But just his thought process is very similar to kind of Larry Karras' in a sense of there's more to life than football. And that is kind of the essence of the award, right? The academic side of things and the community service side of things. Like I'm really, really proud of that from the holistic meaning that trophy has, not necessarily just the football.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, because at the end of the day, even if it's just a simple player of the year in your conference or whatever, like I think it gets lost on people a lot that there's so much that goes into it. The coaches, the players, the defense. Like, shoot, you'd probably say that without the defense that you played with, you probably don't win that award either.
No doubt.
And like you said, like, you go to the national championship 3 times, like, if you lose in the first round, you're probably not winning that award either. And that's just kind of how that rolls. And obviously, I don't want to open up old wounds too much, but when you think about
Can't wait.
the different when you think about the differences between a national championship team and a team that falls 1 win short, I feel like the difference is so small because both teams that make a championship, especially in Division III, are so good. But the difference between winning it and losing it is so small. I'm curious, like, what you feel like the difference is when you're thinking about a championship team versus a team that falls 7 points short.
Yeah, it's 3 to 5 plays. That's typically the separator. And, that's the sense of urgency that I was kind of talking about earlier, is you're trying to do everything you can for those 3 to 5 plays to go your way. And even still, who knows, sometimes it's a crapshoot, but, there's especially, you see the rise of, North Central over the last really 10 years, and teams like Bear Hard, Baylor, and Wisconsin Whitewater. Now you have a River Falls and a Cortland a couple years ago. Like, the parity is awesome to see. And to me, that's the beauty of Division III, is it can really be anyone at any given year. I don't care what type of record or lore Mount Union has, or North Central has, or Whitewater. Like, River Falls can beat you, and they can win the national championship. So it's great for the sport. It's great for the entire division when a team does what River Falls just did, because it gives you hope, which is one of our core values here at Mount Union. Like, it gives you hope that it can be us at any given year. But there is such a small, narrow margin for error, and that's where the great teams get it done. And it's why you play, and I've definitely had my fair share of tough losses, but I'm not going to say it's okay to lose, but you can at least sleep at night knowing that you gave it all. You gave it your all and just 100% effort. And sometimes those plays don't go your way. And that's life sometimes, but all the effort in the off season and the training camps and then in the season, during the week, like, you're trying to capture those 3 to 5 plays to be able to have it go your way. Right. So all those indie drills and fundamental technique works, catching the football, securing the football, tackling the right way. Like, all that stuff is for those couple of plays that can determine a game, and it's always good to have Lady Luck on your side. So
it's good perspective, but we will move on from that as quickly as humanly possible. I'm curious, as a player that had so much success, did you always know that you wanted to move on to the coaching profession, or was that something that kind of came on later? Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking. I think coaching kind of came almost by accident. I was, like any player that had success in college, you think, okay, I can play at the next level. And so had some unique opportunities show up, and surprisingly, nobody wanted a 5'10" quarterback from Division III to come play for them in the NFL. So I had to pivot quickly and so looked at other opportunities. And one of the leagues that I wanted to play in ended up folding about 30 days before I was supposed to go. And that was like, almost beginning of August. And so I reached out to Vince Karras, who was the head coach at Mount Union at the time, and just said, "Hey man, I don't really have a home right now. Would love to just be around football." And so he allowed me, thankfully, to come coach quarterbacks in 2015 for Mount Union, as I was kind of finishing up some school. And just that changed my life, for for the better. I mean, it just was like, all right, like this is a different side of things. It was really tough in the first year, but I just love football so much that it was hard to ever get out of it. And I've literally since that semester, I've never thought twice about different career or it's too tough or I'm not making enough money. And I just, there's more to it than some of the external factors. I love showing up every day, and whether it's actually, watching tape or coaching football or doing some of the stuff that surrounds it, because I know it's going to help our guys or help us down the road. Just this profession is elite. It's so fun. It's a child's game, and it couldn't be more fun to be around and be a part of. And I definitely find a lot of joy in that, and try to think about that, in some of the tougher days or more demanding days. But genuinely haven't looked back since 2015, and still haven't hit the the threshold of what I think is to come. But man, it's just been fun, and I'm just falling in love with every single day, just making this place better, and wherever I am, kind of being where your feet are.
I love that. And when you go to Case Western Reserve after that's coming back, getting into coaching initially at Mount Union, I'm curious when you go to a place, and I don't know what Case Western Reserve's win-loss record looked like at the time, but when you go from a place that had so much success, I can imagine that it might have been hard to be like, well, at Mount Union, we just won all the time, so maybe we should do it like this, even though you're a young coach and you're in that role as the running backs and quarterbacks pass game at Case Western. Like, was it difficult to kind of be like, all right, I got to keep learning. I got to keep understanding, like, there is more to this than just having all the success at Mount Union. There's more than one way. Was that kind of the mindset that you had, or was that difficult at all to maybe see something? You're like, well, we did this and we had one national championship. So, like, was there any of that?
A little bit.
Job there?
I think Coach Debelak there, who's been there for forever, was really gracious and honestly, he had a tremendous amount of respect for Mountain Union. He went to John Carroll and played us throughout the years, and had a tremendous amount of respect. And so, he was amazing about, bringing me in, and because I was playing overseas and doing some European football, the American football, not soccer. But he, so I would come coach in the fall, go play in the spring. And so I was kind of initiated into a little bit different way of doing things by going to Vienna, Austria. In 2017 was the first time I went there, and then came back, and that was the first year I was at Case Western. And so I think some of that shock factor was rubbed off, or I guess I became accustomed to it a little bit by the time I got to Case Western in the fall. And so I didn't have an issue with the transition. But yeah, Coach Debs was amazing from a, here's how we've done things here, but I really want to hear what your opinion is. And even though you're, a child coming to coach for us, he was awesome about hearing us out, and because we had a younger staff that year, and he was great about hearing how we did things at different places. We had a coach who was at John Carroll, we had a coach and myself at Mount Union, and so he was great about opening it up and brainstorming, not necessarily falling in love with this is how we've always done it, which isn't really a great reason to continue doing stuff. So he was awesome, and I gave some feedback, but I just was very open to learning about different ways of doing it, because that Mount Union is very successful, but that doesn't mean that that's the only way, right? That's just a way. So I think we were both going into that season very open and receptive to each other and how we did things there. And then Case Western is just one of the best coaching experiences I've ever had, and probably I ever will have. I mean, I was coaching running backs one year and quarterbacks the others, and those kids are amazing. That's one of the places I think is really, really underlooked is Case Western. The academics there are elite, and the football there is just as good. Like, that's a great place to spend your 4 years. I sound like I'm recruiting for them right now, so I probably got to relax. But
Yeah, be
it's
careful.
I know, but it's a great place. It really is, and they do things the right way, and that's all you can ask, especially if you're a parent helping your kid go through this process. So I'm really glad I got to benefit from that experience, and that changed my life. I mean, it's going to be a part. I'm one of the well, Coach Debs reached out to me the other day, and so we're going to be kind of helping each other out a little bit, and just trying to grow the game, and help our staffs out, and so that to me is what's special about D3, and especially a place like Case Western.
When you have a lot of success as a player, it doesn't always translate to being a good coach, especially in the quarterback world. But when you're thinking about coaching and developing quarterbacks, what are some of your, I guess, non-negotiables when it comes to developing those guys both on and off the field?
Yeah, that's a great question. Non-negotiable is a strong word. To me, I think good decision maker is one of the best non-negotiables I can think of. And that's more than just football. We want guys who make good decisions. And I'm talking about sometimes decisions that aren't necessarily glaring in your face. It's like, hey, do I go to that party or not? Right. Like, okay, like maybe it's smarter to stay home or whatever, but do I throw that route or not? Right. That's another easy example. But there's things that I look at that aren't necessarily, handed on a silver platter to a quarterback for him to make a decision on, right? And sometimes it's, am I going to be a vocal leader? Am I going to be someone that just kind of goes with the flow, or what kind of teammate am I going to be? Right? Those are all decisions that guys have to make, and sometimes it's a little more natural, sometimes it's not. But I think a good decision maker is one of the number one non-negotiables we look at. Obviously, when you talk about on the field, I mentioned some of our critical skills at quarterback. I mean, accuracy as a talent, right? As a skill, that's a non-negotiable. Like, I don't care how that thing looks. If you throw it over your head, don't care how it looks. If it gets where it needs to be on time and accurately, that's a non-negotiable. That's something that we can work with. And I think those two are massive components to playing quarterback at the collegiate level, and especially playing quarterback here. But the other thing I would say too is, like, I just want, like, for me, I want guys here that are just good dudes. Guys that have interests outside of football, can find joy in the daily grind and want to come in and watch tape like Mikey is here in a little bit. The guys that know it's going to be a competition, but at the end of the day, like, this should be an enjoyable experience, and we're all going to get better. I'm going to be a better coach for coaching these guys, and these guys are going to be better players, whether or not they're the starter. But I think a non-negotiable would be, guys that are trying to seek joy and trying to be happy, despite some of the discipline and grind and grit that they have to go through to play quarterback here. So, yeah, I don't know. Great question though. I've never really thought about that, but yeah, now you kind of got my mind spinning a little bit. So.
Yeah, well, we'll move on as quickly as I possibly can.
You're good. It's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm coaching the quarterbacks here at Drake this year as in an assistant role, and I'm always curious to hear, like, how other people approach it, because, like, it's funny, like, as I hear this more and more, like, all you see on social media at times is like, all right, like, does he have the best arm strength? Like, how tall is it? Like, there's all these, like, existential factors, like, that a lot of times don't mean anything, but, like, in a way that we run our offense here, like, it like you said, like, if you got to kick the ball to a guy, like, great, as long as it's, like, on time and accurate, who cares?
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to look at it, and that decision making piece is just such a huge factor. And I think it's something that's hard to coach at times, but, like,
it is, and
I think it's also
talk.
a trust thing too.
Yeah,
like, you got to trust your coordinator, you got to trust your receivers. Like, That goes back to like it is totally a team sport in that like if guys are consistently late to their spot, like you're probably not gonna be the most accurate quarterback. But like if you got guys that are early, like that same type of deal.
Yeah, and it's trust of yourself too, right? And trusting what you've been coached and taught to do, and there is a lot of trust that goes into it, and I could talk at length about I mean, I could literally talk all day if you want to talk quarterback play, but um, yeah, I think there's a lot of ways you can see whether or not a guy is a good decision maker, and sometimes it's, hey, did he pull the ball down to run through the pocket and scramble when his guy was open because he knew that somebody else was barreling down on him? So he made the wrong decision, even though it doesn't look like it on tape. He actually got a 10-yard gain running the ball, but he could have thrown the open route, right, or the open receiver, thrown him open, right? So there's different ways to look at it, but I think to me, one of the biggest things that's highly uh, undervalued is the emotional intelligence side of playing quarterback. Um, and what's he like on the sideline after a good or a bad play, and what's he going, what's going through his head in the middle of a play or pre-snap, and how is his demeanor, right? And what's the kind of vibe? And I know everyone's talking about aura now, right? So it's like all those different things, like seriously, that stuff matters, man. Like, I've think about just coaches or quarterbacks and players in general that I've been exposed to the last 12 years or so. And like, when guys have a great vibe and when they kind of don't, and it's just an interesting, an interesting dynamic. And quarterback is, it's the buzzword. It's forever going to be the moneymaker and the hot topic. But I think the emotional side of things is severely undercoached, number one, and just really not thought of at all. Number two, I think it's there's something there. I don't know. There's something there that can be, uh, dug a little deeper into quarterback play, is the the emotional intelligence side of things and the thought process side of things. So
I think playing quarterback is one of the most visible, talked about, popular positions on planet Earth, regardless of profession. Like it's probably just above accountant, just below the president. Like it's probably the most talked about position, but it's probably the most misunderstood at the same time. Like all the things that people think are important, all the things that you hear guys on NFL Network talk about, like he's got to be, it's funny to me. It's the stuff that we never talk about in the actual office or in the actual position meeting rooms. Like you never talk about like the stuff that the guys on TV are talking about, which is a big part of why I really wanted to start this show, is because like I want to talk about that stuff. I want to give that stuff the somewhat of the publicity that it deserves. And
right.
When you go to the FCS level and you go to UC Davis, I'm curious like what that jump to the Division I level taught you about the game, or maybe like what kind of surprised you? Because like when I think about FBS football at times, I get a little starstruck because I always think it's so different, or like it's such a higher level. But what was that jump like for you, and kind of your interpretation of how that whole thing works?
Yeah, it's not, because what matters the most is the guys and the players, and they're the same. And they might be a fraction bigger, faster, taller, stronger, whatever. But that's the same, right? Like that's the core of what this thing is the same. And so the surrounding, circumstances and environments, like those are different. Those are wildly different, especially at that level. It's like, you can be like UC Davis is one of the top, that place is elite, from facilities to coaches and coaches that care, and coaches that know ball, to the location, like all that stuff is elite. One of the best places in FCS Division I football. And then you got teams that are just so far below that Mount Union is far superior in facilities and coaches and things like that at a Division III school. So there's a wide gap, or a wide playing field of degree of how good a place can be. But Yeah, the guys are the same. I mean, you get guys that love the sport, that want to get better, that care a lot about, the right things. And whether you're at, Mountain Union or whether you're at UC Davis or whether you're at, Ohio State, like that, that is the same. But yeah, there's the NIL and you got, the salaries and you got the different type of, I guess, perks that go with that higher level. To me, at least, I don't think it's that big of a difference in terms of what actually matters. And yeah, it just depends on what you're looking for. But that was a shock a little bit from like, oh, all right, like I get to go on flights to go recruit now, and so that stuff, that stuff was really cool, and I enjoyed every bit of UC Davis. I mean, every single bit, and the good days and the bad days. But um, yeah, the thing that actually matters and why all of us should be in the sport as coaches stays the same. The guys and their passion and what they love about football, like that is the same, which was really cool. Because yeah, like I had this image of like, oh, it's Division I, this is crazy. And it was like in some instances, right? Like it was the big time a little bit. But yeah, the stuff, what actually matters stayed the same, which was really cool for me coming from Division III. So
When this opportunity to come back to Mount Union as the offensive coordinator, I can imagine that that meant a lot to you, I can assume. How did this come about, and what was kind of the weeks or the couple days leading up to ultimately coming back as the offensive coordinator at Mount Union?
yeah, it was yeah, man, whirlwind. Hard to accurately describe, and I definitely got to go back and keep a journal of just trying to remember how it all kind of went down, because it was a whirlwind. I mean, it was back and forth. It was the previous coaches that were here, Coach Collins and Coach Ely as the coordinators, they left to go to UConn with Coach Candle, who took that job recently, and so that obviously opened up the window. And then Coach Dark calls me the day after Christmas, and um, I didn't really think anything much of it, and just was kind of like, all right, like yeah, just heard him out. But I was like, no, I'm good. Like I'm good where I'm at now, and um, love where I'm at Davis. It was, I mean, it I talked with Coach Tim Plow quite a bit throughout that process, and it was kind of early on. It was really cool to think about and kind of almost fantasize about it a little bit, but I didn't really think much of it. And then I kind of started talking more with Coach Dart about what it's actually going to look like, and essentially being the head coach of the offense, and just what he was allowing me to do. I was like, man, I mean, I don't have the OC experience on my resume right now. This is what I want to do to take the next step and grow as a coach, and learn and just become a better, because I know without a doubt it's going to make me a better coach, and I'm going to mess it up, in some aspects, but I'm excited for that. I'm excited to learn by fire, but it was becoming a little bit more real as the days were kind of going on through late December. And so I had a lot of conversation with Coach Tim Plow, and Coach Plow was great about, all right, let's think about, pros and cons, and was giving great, honest feedback. And at the end of the day, he was like, I honestly, we don't want to lose you, but I think it's something you really got to consider doing. So it timed up with my fiance Charlie and I were taking a trip to Tahoe, I think December 27th or something like that, to oddly enough go see some snow, because California, we don't really see some snow. So we went to Tahoe and got away a little bit, brought the dogs up there, and it worked out perfectly because we didn't have much service. And so we just kind of hunkered down in a snowstorm and talked it all out, and kind of came to the conclusion that this is probably the best possible thing that could come available to us right now. And I say us because she was a huge part of it. I mean, I wasn't even gonna, Coach Dark called me on the 26th, and I had it on speakerphone, and she was in the background kind of listening at the apartment. And in my head, I'm thinking like, oh, how do I even bring it up to convince her to moved back, because we're 45 minutes from Napa and it's beautiful California. And I hung up the phone, and before I said anything, she just goes, can I say something? And I was like, oh man, yeah, what? She's like, I don't hate it. I was like, whoa, all right. So,
This is an awesome response.
and because it was, we had been here prior, and it was like, well, you kind of feel like you're going back to, and there's the emotional side of things, and so there was everything I was kind of factoring in, and so that to me was like, wow, all right, I don't have to like convince her to do this, and she, was okay with losing her job and not having a job, moving back here and trying to do that whole, like, it was just a lot for her, and I give her so much credit for my journey, because it's not my journey, it's our journey, and I've had the ability to do the things I want to do because of her, genuinely, because she's the best thing that's happened to me, and I have all these accolades and all that, but if it weren't for her, like, man, none of this would be happening. So I really have to give her credit in kind of taking a step back and allowing my ego to take over a little bit. But it was a whirlwind, and at the end of the day, like I told you, I talked to a bunch of people and some of the players and some of the coaches, and it was too good to pass up from a growth standpoint. I don't know where it's going to lead, but I know I'm going to become a better coach out of it. And I just hope along the way we can have some success, and we can get these players what I feel they deserve, and just take it one day at a time. But so far in the last 6 weeks, it's been a dream. It's been exhausting. Tired to the core, to the bones, but it's been great, man. And I don't feel like I'm working, which is the sweet spot.
That's awesome. That is the women in this profession, I think, are obviously not talked about very much, but they are so important to, I mean, behind every great coach, there's a great fiance or wag, as I know they like to say that, but I'm glad that you brought that up, because it's so true. Without getting into the weeds too much, I'm curious, like, your core beliefs as far as like scheme or things that that you always want to have in when it's a Kevin Burke offense. I'm like I said, without like telling what you're going to run on the first play of the season, but like what are some of the things that that you're always going to have in, and kind of what you want a modern Mount Union offense to look like in 2026?
To me, honestly, it's aggressive and it's simple. Like, those are the two things that I really want to be, and that's going to look so different year to year, but it changed. It's because I'm doing, some things right now with our guys in our playbook, and trying to, teach them kind of what we want to be doing in the fall. But even meeting with some of our players, like, before I talked about what I wanted to be, they told me, hey, we want to be, in more PG terms, we want to be aggressive. We want to be aggressive, and we want to be violent. We want to be aggressive, and we want to be explosive, and be able to be efficient, right? So to me, that comes down to simplicity, and that is like just rooted in the core of what I was as a player. When I talked about Larry Karras kind of retooling the entire offense, well, when I was a player, I mean, we didn't have a lot, and we were really good at the things that we ran, though, like really good. And that game when we were down against Mary Hardin Baylor in the fourth quarter, down by 14, I mean, even in the 2-minute drills, it's like Coach Karras is going back to the things that we've run all year, and I think Coach Leach was the one that kind of got attributed with the phrase of, in those really high intense moments, or when you're down or things like that, like, run the stuff that you've run over and over and over and over again. Run the plays you've got 1,000 reps at, because those are the ones that you're going to be good at, and those are the ones that are going to, like we talked about, build the confidence of your players and give them conviction to execute it the right way. And so we're going to be simple. I'm going to be aggressive, and Coach Dart's going to have to tell me we're not going for it on fourth down, as opposed to, hey, we are going for it on fourth down. Like, I want to always be in fourth down territory no matter where we are. And, I want to be violent, because football is inherently violent. And, it's it's the one sport you can get away legally with beating somebody up, so other than, I guess, boxing. But yeah, to me it's aggressive and it's simple, and that's going to look different, and obviously going to keep as close as I can the information to the vest here. But
Of course, as
you
you
know
should.
but game one, everybody's going to see it, and we're not running the wing tee, I'll tell you that. So coaches don't have to prepare for that with us, but we're going to try and be aggressive. We're going to try and keep it simple for our players to just go out, fly around, and execute.
Well, I'm very excited to see what that looks like. It's funny. So I had Drew Hollingshed on. He was the offense coordinator at Coastal. I think I'm not exactly sure where he's landed at this point, but we were talking about the game against, it was Texas Tech. I can't remember who they were playing, but it was the Michael Crabtree last minute, and I was asking him about, like, and it's public now, but talking about how, like, what was the unique play call? How right did you get this situation? He was like, oh no, it was like, that was their 6 call. Like, it's just 4 verts for them. And he's like, man, there was days in practice where we called it 6 day, and they would literally run 4 verticals out of every formation that they had, and they just got so good at it. Whether it was throwing the dropout against quarters, throwing the bender against cover 2, like, they were just so good at it. And that honestly makes a lot of sense. And it's funny how, like, when you ask a coach or hey, what was the play on this game-winning drive? It's like, man, that's just a basic ass play we run every time.
Yeah.
I always love those stories, but
That's the best. And you have those, you got the creative one-off plays and 2-point plays
sure.
and things like that. But, like, man, 90% of what you do should be what you do, and yeah, that's good and that's, to me, that's a way. It's not the only way, but to me, it's the way that we'll do it, and I think it's the right way to do it.
Yeah. Our offense coordinator here at Drake, he was at River Falls last year. He says probably more than once a day, he's always like, I'm really not that smart. Like, I just want to get everybody enough answers that it makes me look super smart. And he would say that publicly. But I just think that's so crucial to have a million answers for your guys. Whether that's being able to run it against any front, any coverage, whatever the case is. But I just think it's so true. But Coach, I can't thank you enough. I'm so excited for you guys this season. We'll definitely be trying to get out there sometime this fall. But you're the man. It's been fun getting to know you a little bit and learn more about your history. But very excited for you in this first season with Mount Union.
Appreciate it. Thanks. I'm fired up. I appreciate you having me come on and talk about the Raiders a little bit. And yeah, I'm excited. I think just as excited as anybody can be for a fall season, and it's going to be fun. It'll be a lot of fun. I know that for sure. And we're going to take it day by day and just enjoy it. So I appreciate it. Your podcast is great, man. You've been doing some good stuff for this level of football, and obviously more than just this level, but keep up the good work, because like we talked about a little bit before, it's just, you can never get enough exposure for this level. And I think it deserves a lot more than what it is getting. So appreciate you.